Nice to see everybody today as the NBA season is about to complete its first half. The All-Star game is approaching. The NBA deadline has passed. There have been some big moves. There have been some small moves, and there were no moves at all. As we hit on the big headlines of the NBA season so far, let's get into it with the with the productive NBA crew. Alex Ranniello, David Bach, and Dolo Ren here as always. What's up, guys? How are we doing?
How you doing, boys? Happy to be back.
Excellent.
I'm good. It was an exciting trade deadline. Literally, I don't think the Spurs have made more trades in my lifetime at the trade deadline than they did this week. It was considered an incredibly active one. We did 3 fucking trades.
Definitely more than my team, who made 0. So why don't we hop into that? Well, you were saying,
to be fair, the only rumor was them giving up Cam Reddish and like half of your team for like nothing.
Yeah, with those Laker deals that allegedly were discussed and fell through. But before we get into those deals, let's talk about the elephant in the room right away. The big trade that everybody was waiting for inevitably happened. And for a player that has been mentioned numerous times on this show, let's talk about the big deal that changed everything for him. The Brooklyn Nets and the Philadelphia 76ers agreed to this blockbuster deal, which included James Harden and Paul Millsap going to Philadelphia for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks. Like I said, a deal that people were waiting many months for, and it finally happened. Though the main acquisitions haven't played yet for either team, we can now truly soak this in once and for all. So talk to me, guys. Tell me initial thoughts about Ben Simmons going to Brooklyn, James Harden going to Philly, and how is this going to affect the rest of the season?
Both teams won. Both teams won and both. I mean, Philly won even more because I don't know if you saw this, but Harden didn't get the paperwork in time to pick up his $47 million option.
Yes, and that caused Seth and Draymond to sit, not initially the first game back, which they won yesterday, but still. So he's literally getting one last final laugh because technically the deal isn't made until everyone passes their physical. And we could see that Mr. Harden was given.
No, it wasn't a physical. It was. They didn't get the paperwork. So this is similar to something that happened in like the early 2000s, where one of the agents for a player in Miami didn't fax their paperwork in to say that they were picking up their option. And because they didn't do that, then Miami ended up having like the cap space to make a trade that ultimately led to them getting Shaq.
Mm.
So it's type of like that. But I mean, look, both teams won this. I think, look, Harden was not fitting in Brooklyn. I mean, he's fat and he's out of shape. But he was a little redundant. Now, Simmons on paper fits really well for this team. He can do the defense. He can just pass. He doesn't, they can stick him in the dunker spot. Getting Seth Curry is really good because Seth Curry's like what Joe Harris is, like the best version of Joe Harris is Seth Curry. You have Andre Drummond, who like people still hate on Andre Drummond, but like, he's not, he's fine. Like as a big man, he's what you need to throw at a body, and that's fine.
Still relatively young too.
I think he's averaging like 9 boards latest season.
Yeah, I mean,
he's walking 12 and 10, no doubt. Yeah, go ahead, Bach. My bad.
No, and then like, look, here's the thing for Philly. You're talking about 2 ISO guys who've never played together with players like this. You're also talking about a player who's famously sucks in clutch situations, being coached by the number 1 coach when it comes to losing game 7s and blowing 3-1 leads. So I can't imagine at any point that's going to have some type of issue if they come into another clutch position. But look, it also depends. Apparently Harden is now skinny Harden, similar to when he was in Houston and he was fat for 3 weeks and then he showed up in Brooklyn. He lost 40 pounds in 10 minutes. Apparently he's done the same thing in practice there. But like,
it's not healthy to lose that much weight that quickly.
Well, it's also because it's padding. he's just pretending.
The late night BK runs.
It's the $1 million strip clubs. Oh, that's another thing. I don't know what the strip clubs are like in Philly, but they're about to see a huge influx.
I
But
don't
look,
think
bro,
it's that
both
crazy
teams,
either,
both
'cause-
teams, I think won this. It's gonna be interesting. So we'll see. I look, I think it's
Yeah.
good that it's finally done. I mean, it paid off for Philly. They held out because we've been talking about this. We've covered this on multiple pods. We're talking like maybe they'll get like Tyrese Halliburton, or maybe they'll get Siakam or something like that, or they'll get like D'Angelo Russell. They still got freaking James Harden, so it's not like they essentially upgraded the spot where Seth Curry was to James Harden, and
Yeah,
I mean,
you're
they
right.
didn't lose anything
Yeah.
that much.
And the added bonus too is that they both complement the rosters that they're now joining too, because you're getting a motivated Harden who was in a bad position. He wanted out immediately as fast as possible. And same goes for Ben Simmons. So you're getting hyper motivated players on brand new rosters where their role is carved out, it's solidified, and it's complementary basketball. Because the one knock on the Nets was that they couldn't stop anybody. They had really thin in their backcourt. They didn't have the arm strength or the length to really contain guys. Ben Simmons is that guy. He's clearly the catalyst for that defense. And he could be a nice complement, number 2 to KD, and alleviate some of the pressure in transition. And then the other thing too with James Harden is now, because of how talented and widespread his ability is on the floor, spacing and whatnot, with James Harden on the offense, he can allow Embiid to work on the post, not clog up the lane. Their play and their style is more complementary. So I think both teams won, like Bach said. And I think more so Brooklyn got a lot of nice additional minutes between Drummond and Curry for the future, when they're going to be running a lot of new guys on that rotation out, depending on health and depending on the schedule as well.
Yeah. Well, also, like the other thing, they're still down like 17 first-round picks for the Harden trade, and Millsap was leaving. I thought they had released him. I didn't realize they hadn't released him yet. I thought he was going to be waived anyway. So I mean, the fact that you turned, I assumed it was a salary matching thing for him into that is fine. But it'll be like the real thing is like, does Philly want to pay James Harden like $50 million in like 3 years?
I guess that will be only decided if they can win now. This could be the final moment of the process that has been talking about for almost half a decade now.
Just the process.
And I figure, in this wood down mentality, they will worry down the line if they want to give him that major extension or not.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I don't know when Simmons is going to be when he's going to play. I don't know what his status is like vaccine wise. I have to assume he's vaccinated.
Yeah.
But I don't know like where he would have to be for his conditioning. I think Harden's coming back after the playoffs and the All-Star break because he's still nursing his hamstring. But look, I mean, it's going to be the East is going to be a bloodbath. The 2 series I want to see is see Cleveland play Toronto, and I want to see Philly play Brooklyn. I mean, that's in the cards based on like how bad Brooklyn has been the last couple of weeks. Granted, it's all essentially been without like Durant.
Yeah, they were on a 10-game losing streak up until yesterday.
You could easily get Philly and Brooklyn the second round, no doubt.
Not first round.
Yeah, for sure.
With a one, Sixers were in the 4 seed.
No, let's do it. I don't care. First round. Let them have
Whatever.
But there's like a game and a half of difference between like the 1 and the 6 seed.
Okay.
Cleveland could be the 1 seed. If Cleveland's the 1 seed, Dan Gilbert's gonna have a fucking stroke jerk himself also. Like
back another time.
I can't believe that fucking team works.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. And, the one thing now also looking at this down the line with Ben Simmons was his quote unquote, personal issues. Was that a factor in why he couldn't make do in Philly? And now with this change of scenery, can we see Ben Simmons unlock the potential everybody assumed he always has? Do you guys feel that that's the case? Do you feel that Ben Simmons is going to turn it on and this team can make a deep run now or was ultimately excuses when it comes to Ben Simmons?
Well, I mean, if he does it, what's his other option? He's like done, or the Lakers trade him for Westbrook.
For one.
I mean, like that. Those are his options.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
sort of his. My bad. My bad, Alex. Go ahead.
No, Dolo, go ahead.
No, I mean, I was gonna say. I mean, I guess to some people, it kind of looks like one of his last chances to really prove himself. I mean, he looks happy. He looks happy over there. He's in the spotlight. And that's his it's a big market. I mean, I think so. I mean, we still got to see how it plays out. I really like seeing Seth and Drummond playing the other night. That was a really good debut for them guys. But as far as Ben Simmons, I think we still got to see. It's really one of those things. He's still young, kind of not really unpredictable, but you know what I mean. Like, you gotta let it play out. But he looks happy.
And
Go ahead, Nat.
I was gonna say the other thing down the line too for the Nets is if whenever we see the things mesh well, and if they're gonna play more than 16 games like Scary Hours did. What's up, Alex? You were about to say a point?
Yeah, I just think like with his personality issues and the personal issues that he was espousing to have at the beginning of the season, I think that had more to do with the end result of last season, issues within the locker room. But now that he's out of that environment, I think those things kind of fall wayside. Not to be facetious, but I just think that that's how a lot of these younger players handle their personal, business with the team and the organization as well. I think they kind of oftentimes shroud it under this, umbrella of like mental health and kind of stretch that boundary a little bit when it's due and when it's undue. So I think he'll be in a lot better opportunity now with Brooklyn, where he doesn't have to be the guy. He can let Durant take over and let Kyrie run some of the offense as well.
Okay. And then now also with the bigger picture down the line with Brooklyn is Kyrie Irving. Now, we know at this moment he's still playing road games. Now we're seeing, obviously the reason why that Kyrie isn't playing is because of the mask mandate laws in New York City preventing him to play. Well, yes, that's what I meant. The issues with the mask. Now we are seeing a transition. We're seeing some more legislations and mask mandates. We're seeing these rules get lifted. Do we see this happening at all in the city of New York by May and June when there are major playoff games? Bach, I know you especially have a hold on this, being involved and knowing the political world very well. Do you see Kyrie coming in playing home games at all before the end of the season because of mask mandate law changes?
Well, no, because he's being held up for the vaccine. I'm going to say probably no. And there's two caveats to this. One, we have no idea what's going to pop up in like 3 months if there's going to be another variant that changes things. That could always throw everything into curve. Also, there's the other thing of Eric Adams is kind of a dick. So
as we agreed on,
I don't see, like, I think there's a chance, like, just to spite Nets fans, he would like not bring it up.
Every
he would do it simply out of personal spite, huh?
Look, my man's is a wildin' dude. He said you can't tell the difference between people eating cheese and people eating and people who are hooked on drugs. He made his brother the commissioner for the police, even though he had no qualifications. This dude is like it. He is
even know that.
Like a wild dude. It is pretty wild that he won. He may not even live in New York. It's everywhere. It's
pretty. These people are self. They're not voted for.
It's not a I don't see it happening. I mean, we would have to get to, because look, so this is another thing with that as well. The you have to understand like where the numbers are in general. So we vary between about 2,500 and 3,300 deaths per day. over the last 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Even if we get everyone vaccinated, we're still averaging around 300-ish vaccinated deaths a day. So we're still talking like a high level of death. That's still 40,000 deaths, 4,500 deaths a month. That's certainly higher than flu numbers, but that's much more manageable than 3,000. So if we end up with some type of high vaccination surge, which has not existed at any point during this country's history with the vaccines for this pandemic, maybe, but I don't see it unless like the other variant, the next variant that pops up is like essentially useless compared to the people who've already gotten Omicron and then the 3 boosters. But we don't.
Well,
it's too difficult to know.
Yeah, I mean, even if there's a new variant that pops up, it's going to be less virulent and more transmissible. That's how these viruses work. That's just common knowledge. I mean, even if a new variant pops up, I think a lot of these cities, if they're playing their politics correctly, they'll start to ease up on things now that the midterms are coming up. So if they know what's good for them, they're going to ease up on restrictions.
Well, I mean, that first off, that's not. I mean, this is clearly offsetting from what our main topic is, but that's not even good politics.
No, I know.
Like even if we talk about like these are less viral or more viral and less deadly, Delta was both more viral and more deadly than Alpha. So just to say it like that is not entirely accurate with this disease, and it depends on the virality because this was like 3.5 times as viral, and
but also those death numbers that you were talking about, is that people that are dying from COVID, or is it people in the hospital that are dying and they have COVID?
Are you asking me for versus with?
Yeah,
I don't think those numbers make any difference because because look, by that definition, nobody has died from AIDS.
Yeah,
because so I hear this a lot, and I'm going to be honest, I don't have an answer because nobody who asked me this question can ever give me an answer of what they think the numbers are for people who will like come in with a broken leg and then they test positive for COVID and they count that as like COVID cases. Like if you can give me numbers for that and something, I'd be honest to say.
All right, cool.
That's totally fair.
Yes. Right. And just last point on this, and then we'll switch it. Why I also brought it up. Oh, I thought you were gonna finish your thought, but anyways, we definitely hear that it is very vital information. But having said all this, though, regardless of the politics coming into this and Kyrie's playing status, do you still think the Nets can make a run if Kyrie's a part-time player?
Yeah,
it's gonna be.
They still have KD.
I think so.
Yeah,
for sure. I definitely think so.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well. Like I said, we'll see how this plays out. You were saying?
Oh, just the last quick point. I think yes, they definitely can, but it's going to come down to Steve Nash's management of the rotation. Because if you're planning for home games versus road games, it's going to throw a huge kink into how many minutes you can give guys and where spots down the stretch of games.
Right. So, obviously, the biggest trade of this deadline, and after the All-Star game, we'll see how this plays out once and for all. So I also want to go to Bach. As you mentioned on the top of this show, the Spurs are very busy in this trade deadline. They're acquiring players like Gordon Dragic and Richardson and Langford, Satoransky from Houston. The Spurs were very busy and completely changed their roster. First, as a fan, how do you feel about this? And then where do you see this ultimately resulting into for a team that so far isn't really a playoff contender?
Good. We're actually doing the rebuild. So there's a couple things. One, when we did the trade with Portland, we got, hold on, I actually have this pulled up just so I can, because it was a 3-team trade. So we did the 3-team trade, which we got to talk about that because fucking the Pelicans got robbed like on every trade they did.
Including a big Bradley Beal trade.
No, the Thomas. So we got Saransky and a 2nd-round pick essentially for nothing. Oh, for Juan Gomez. Like that's fine. We got a pick out of it. We'll do something with what's his face? Sadaransky, he's useful sometimes. I imagine he's just like filler. The Thad Young trade though, I'm upset about because I really thought we were going to be able to flip him to get Jalen Smith, who we actually could have used from the Suns, and then the fucking Pacers got him for Torrey Craig and cash. So we did get a first rounder for that. We got let's see what else we got. So the Dragic trade I was a little surprised about. Mostly because we didn't then flip him, we just kind of let him go. So we got a first rounder for that. I'm okay with that. I'm upset we didn't like try to flip him for anything else. The Derek White trade. So it's good that we moved on from Derek White because he didn't like the ceiling was there. We have the Derek White moment as a Spur was like 3 years ago when we were playing the Nuggets and he dropped 35 and he posterized Paul Millsap. That was like the peak for Derek White. Getting Josh Richardson's fine. He can help on the bench. Romeo Langford will do a thing. Maybe we have him for next year. But the real thing is we got that 2028 first round pick swap. That's the big key for that. So we have 3 first rounders now. The projected ones for this draft are we have number 6, number 18, and number 20. I didn't realize we were that bad for 6. So there's a really good chance that we can end up with the top 5 pick this year. Because I don't even know who's behind us, but we're relatively bad. And like at this point, it's just DeJounte Murray doing DeJounte Murray things. And then everyone else on the team kind of sucks. Also, DeJounte Murray is the number 1 in triple doubles in Spurs history. And he just made the All-Star team, which he should have made originally instead of being a replacement player, but that's not the point. But we're going to rebuild. It's going to be weird. We got a lot of bites at the apple. We can still, it's not like we can't flip guys. There's still possibly a Jakob Poeltl trade in the offseason because we have Jack Landry, we have Zach Collins, depending on who we end up with in the draft. Because I'm going to be honest, I'm terrified we end up in the top 3 and not number 1 because I just know we're going to end up with Chet Holmgren, and I can't watch Chet Holmgren for 15 years. The dude weighs like essentially the same as I do, and he's 7 feet tall. Nothing about him makes sense on a basketball court. I really want the kid from Auburn, and I don't want the kid from Duke. The kid can't. He doesn't know how to drink water. But look. It's weird to like this. I think I like what we're doing mostly. I still don't like the Primo pick. But I think there's a potential Jakob Poeltl, Lonnie Walker trade in the future. Devin Vassell is going to be really good, so I'm very excited about this. But yeah, I'm we're stacking assets, and I'm excited for the future. I love DeJounte Murray. He's like one of my favorite players.
So how long do you think it will take for your team to be truly competitive again? Could this flip around next season? Are you going to wait a couple years until you see those picks ultimately turned into assets? Where do you see your team finally be in the powerhouse they were again?
Well, look, we got one of the 10 best players of all time 20 years ago. And then, it's hard to, and then kept
Tim Duncan.
So unless we end up with somebody in this draft who's a Tim Duncan type, we're not going to be like that. We're probably a couple of years out. Or if somebody I don't even know who would be on the market that we could get that would just rapidly change our town. Like, are we getting Towns? Like, if we could get Towns, that would be like a big deal. I don't know who else. Like, we're not getting Dame. We're not getting like who is available that would come like other than Towns or John Collins. I still don't understand how we haven't figured out how to get John Collins yet. I would like John Collins on the roster. I think we're going to build it slow because look, even if we get guys in like the 30s, the 20s, and the mid 20s, this isn't like with Boston where they had like a bajillion picks. We can actually like develop our guys. Like everyone who comes into San Antonio is infinitely better when they're coming for San Antonio. So even if they're not like superstars, they'll be solid picks that we could flip for something else in the future. You can build a foundation of rotational guys, enough of them to like go get a star. Or something to be part of and to build things. Like you just keep throwing it out for assets. So look, I can't tell you because I don't know where we end up in the draft. Maybe if we figure that out later. But like to be the perennial contenders, we're probably like half a decade out. There's like a lot of the teams that are on the rise. Like Jokic is still at 26. The Grizzlies are still rising. The Minnesota might be good next year. Maybe at some point Zion will stop being fat. Luka still exists. LeBron is still there. Like the Lakers are doing a thing, but he's still there. Maybe at one point the Kings will figure it out. Golden State, like we're probably a half decade out. Unless realistically, unless we get like a top pick this year, where we get Amani Bates next year. That's really all I know.
Yeah, I think it's like 6 teams in the West at the top, kind of like you were mentioning, like Suns, Warriors, Grizzlies, Jazz, Mavs, Nuggets, and then everything else I think is interchangeable the next immediate future, like the next 5 years or so. I think everything else is subject to change from there.
Hear that. So another team that has a similar trajectory at the moment, and a team who is right under Bach's Spurs, the Sacramento Kings made a big trade as well right before the deadline. So while trading with the Indiana Pacers, Indiana sends Justin Holiday, Jeremy Lamb, Domantas Sabonis, and a 2023 second round pick to the Kings, while the Kings ship out Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Tristan Thompson. So also including this was the Pacers giving Karis LeVert away to the Cavs. The Pacers dump everybody to go young, as they're also completing the rebuild too. But focusing on the Kings specifically, a franchise that truly has been in the dark forever, essentially losing to Shaq and Kobe has kept them out of the limelight ever since. But do we see the Kings now having a more respectful way of going things, where you have De'Aaron Fox, who's obviously a big player on the watch, now bringing in Sabonis, who's been a truly great rising star to watch in the NBA? Do we see now the pieces coming together for the Kings, similar to how the Bulls made so many acquisitions last year's trade deadline, and now that they're a major threat in the East? Do we think this is the West Coast version right here with the Kings? No, you say no. Why is that?
No, because they made a mistake. They first off, they took 3 guards in 4 drafts, and the one draft they didn't take a guard. They should have taken a guard because he was better than all the other guards. And that was when they took Bagley, which I swear to God, I can't wait for like a 30 for 30 on what decided that Marvin Bagley was the choice over fucking Luka or Trae Young. And again, they traded the best guard that they had. Tyrese Halliburton was the best guard they had.
Yeah.
And again, I talked about this to you guys on Instagram. I do not understand why, if you're going to trade Halliburton, you wouldn't trade him for Simmons. Like, there was a chance there that they could have gotten that for like Buddy Hield and for probably a similar package. That's just what it is. Like, Simmons would have fit better. He would have. He makes more sense because they put Sabonis on a team that has no shooting. De'Aaron Fox isn't a shooter. Mitchell isn't a shooter. Buddy Hield was the best shooter. Like, you're gonna put Sabonis next to Richard Holmes, who you just extended. Like, this makes no sense. This is making a mistake, compounding your mistakes by making more mistakes. This was a disaster anyway.
Ooh, nice strong words with disaster. Do you guys think this is a disaster as well? And Alex and Dolo, tell me your thoughts of this trade. Do you also feel the same way as Bach, or a little different?
I mean, honestly, I was a little bit more mad at it at the beginning. Halliburton's was easily their best player. Buddy Hield is a great shooter. Oh, I'm decent, good shooter. Tristan Thompson, I mean,
hasn't been relevant in 4 years.
Pretty much, yeah. And then there is that whole rumor, that whole controversy of him telling that girl, like, "Oh, I'm gonna retire next year, so don't expect any child support money." I think now he has to pay like $12 million in child support. I think he's gonna be playing ball for another. He's probably gonna be in the league for a little while, trying to scrap up as much money as he can to pay his baby mothers. Anyways, honestly, like Yeah, I mean, them getting Sabonis was, I mean, kind of weird. I mean, seeing them play, I was able to watch the highlights of the Nets and Kings game the other night. I mean, seeing Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, it seems like they play okay off rip. They play decently off rip. I mean, seeing them play kind of made it feel a little better. I mean, okay, they play decent. But yeah, they should not have gotten rid of Halliburton and Buddy Hield for sure. Yeah, the Kings is really a weird franchise, honestly. Like I can't believe they had DeMarcus Cousins at one point.
Well, then
This
they've
is
had picks in the past, but the current present ownership is just so poor. Like kind of like Bach said, like the decision making to have all those picks and whiff on all those guards year after year is just it's devastating. You don't recover from that because draft capital is the highest capital in the league, and that's the only way you're going to turn it around in short order. I like the move to get Sabonis, but they just gave up too much shooting, and it's a shooters league, and it's hard to compete in the West if you're gonna no pun intended, shoot yourself in the foot. So
yeah, what they gave up and what they got wasn't.
that's the thing.
They kind of lost the trade, but it wasn't that bad.
Getting some shooting would help certainly, but they're just like a weirdly constructed team. They're undersized. Their guards aren't really like great. Like Sabonis and Fox would be good together if you had like any spacing or any like trust in that team.
They have no roster around that.
Yeah, Harrison Barnes is okay. Like, I mean,
for sure.
There was like the first 2 weeks where he averaged like 28 a game. So
he's still a solid wing, but they're just poorly constructed. Like you have a nice 1-2 punch between Sabonis and Fox, but there's really no supporting cast to go for the ride, and you need shooting in this league to stay competitive.
Yeah, and it doesn't solve their like defensive issues. And then look, Rashard, like, what are you doing with Rashard Holmes? Like he's still solid. Like honestly, you know what? This is gonna be a homer moment, but underrated an underrated trade. Actually, that's not true. That would be a bad trade now that I think about it. If they could get Lonnie Walker, that would certainly help them because he's like the quintessential guy who like kind of could be like a shooter in theory, but isn't like really a shooter. That it would make sense for them to get. And if they like traded like Rashard Holmes for it, but we have enough big men, so we don't need them. Never mind. Like I don't even know. Maybe the fucking Dallas could have used them. Dallas could have used it because they have no big guys. Actually, that's not true. They still have Moses Brown. They traded for him and didn't do anything with him.
Well, they're fully all in on having Luka be the centerfold because I mean we'll talk about it after, but moving Porzingis, that just tells you they're all in on Luka now. Everything's around him.
Yeah, we can even get into it right away. So the other big deal, another big deal that took place right before the deadline, the Mavericks send Kristaps Porzingis to the Wizards. The Wizards get KP and the second round pick in the draft this year. And then the Mavs get Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans. I'll start with Dolo with this one as well. What do you think of this while the Mavs are still competing? Now they are fifth in the West right now. How do we feel about the KP era ending? I'll just say one thing. The Knicks definitely won that trade when they let him go all those years ago.
I mean, him going to the Wizards is like, that's like, I don't know how to put it, like, not good. It's just kind of funny, honestly. Like, yeah, like you get, I kind of feel like Luka was, who they were who the Mavs were focusing on, for a little while now. So I'm not too surprised by it, but, and yeah, apparently they didn't get along that well. So I'm not really too sure about that. I feel like Spencer Dinwiddie, I feel like that's going to be good experience for him playing with Luka. I feel like, he could learn a lot from Luka and, that might end up good for him as far as his career. But, yeah, I think the Mavs just got to make some more moves. I wouldn't know off the top of my head what they should do, but it's definitely not the end for them. I don't think it's enough. They're going to need some more. They're going to need some more than that. But, as far as Porzingis, well, yeah. He's on the Wizards now. That's all I can really say about that.
the end of his rope.
Well, I mean,
Pretty
look,
much, yeah.
they traded him at the height of his worth. He'd been relatively healthy this season. He was playing well. The problem is they got back bad contracts. Like Stenson did, he's playing like dog shit.
Yeah.
Jared Bertans is a shooter who can't shoot. So like they had to move one bad contract to get two, and which could essentially be moved a little bit easier than Porzingis's one, but it's not like a great thing. And especially if they sign Dragic like they're kind of expected to, it doesn't make sense either. So I don't know if it's probably that they couldn't get Porzingis for a for anything else. Like it wasn't going to work. If you have but to be fair to them, in hindsight, every team makes the trade for Porzingis that the Mavericks did. They gave up essentially nothing for him at that point. And if Porzingis is healthy, we're talking about a different. They're not making this trade. He just hasn't been healthy. That's what it was. Like it in theory he fits with Luka. But on the court he just didn't. He was never healthy when they needed him, and he wasn't the same player they thought they were getting in New York. But I mean they do that trade again 10 out of 10 times. This just shows you how far his stock has fallen. And I think similar to when they traded him originally, the fact that there was like no market out there, like, cause I don't even know who else they would have traded for him. Like there's not really a lot of teams that could have like moved this sack. Like maybe if they gave up like 2 or 3 first rounders, do you think they could have given him to the Thunder and he could have been taught Poku how to play basketball? Like there just wasn't a lot. But I think this is more for the Wizards. They got no idea what the fuck they're doing. They gave up. I cannot believe they did not trade Bradley Beal. You have to trade a player when he's like, yeah, I'm kind of not sure if I want to be here anymore. Right. I think getting him having the surgery like right before this happened certainly didn't help. But like when we saw that, I was like, he's gone. Like you can't keep a guy who's like, maybe I want to stay here, maybe I don't. And also they have 19 fucking power forwards. They got who is Porzingis going to displace? They got Kuzma. They got Roy Hachimura. They got Denny Avita. They got Gafford. They got Thomas Bryant. Like where does Porzingis fit in that glut of big people? Are they going to try to do what the Kings with the Cavs did with their 3 big lineup? Well, who is your Evan Mobley then? It's not Kuzma. Is it Denny Avita? Are you hoping Denny Avita grows 2 feet and then becomes like amazing? Although I'm not gonna lie, I still wanted Denny Avita in San Antonio. Maybe it's because he's Israeli.
Yeah, I think this was a matter of shifting assets. I think even though like you guys alluded to, Dinwiddie's had a down year by the numbers, and same with Bertans, but they are shooting threats at the end of the day. Like they're gonna go into the playoffs, they're gonna have to play honest defense against them, and Mavs have just made it clear, if they haven't already, that they're all in on just putting pieces around Luka the same way they kind of did with that Orlando team about 11, 12 years ago with Dwight, just surrounding him with shooters all over the place, even though obviously Luka's a tremendous dynamic player. But it's going to be interesting to see what it comes down to when they try to transform those assets, because I'm assuming they're on very short contracts. And like you mentioned, Bach, like, who knows what the hell the Wizards are doing, because they lost their window is closing on moving Beal and trying to get, even a semblance of equity back for him. So that's got to be a troubling situation. If they haven't learned their lesson from the John Wall contract, it's it's not going to look good for them in the near future. The issue with the NBA is that the NFL doesn't have is you can't make a tremendous jump from worst to first. Within a year. It takes 3 or 4 years because
the Cavs just did that.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to dig yourself out of a hole so quickly, and it's a lot more difficult to do. Yeah,
but like they're not good. They're not in a place where they can be bad enough to dig themselves out. They gotta figure out what they have. And they don't have they have a whole bunch of solid. The question really comes down to, do you believe Bradley Beal could be the best or the second best player on your team? And if you believe he could be the second best player, well, you have to go get your number one. How are you going to get your number one? Because he's not on the roster. And then if you trade him, like who's going to trade for Bradley Beal? Like I understand that like where are the actual assets coming from for Bradley Beal? You're not going to trade him for McCollum. You're not going to trade like Denver, maybe?
It's not that people won't trade for him. It's just where the asset's going to come from.
Yeah. So like that's what I'm asking. Like, who is going to trade for Bradley?
Right.
Who, like, what team do you think is it thinks they were Bradley Beal away from competing? I would have thought it would be like Dallas could have realistically talked themselves into that. But they're not going to do that because Porzingis was their best trade piece. The Grizzlies, the Grizzlies are going to trade for Bradley Beal. Like the Nuggets a couple years ago made sense.
Maybe, maybe, but not anymore.
I just don't see where the market, like the thing of not trading for Simmons early, like it worked out for Daryl Morey, but it hurt a lot of these teams who really had the options. Because I do think James Harden probably was the third option if you had to pick for like of the three superstars between Lillard, Beal, and Harden. I think Harden was the third option. It would have been my third option if I had to pick one. But I think we're also talking about Daryl Morey, who apparently is now trying to bring back D'Antoni because fuck it, why not? But no, this is a weird trade. It doesn't make any sense. It's a lot of fringe stuff that I don't really know where they go. I don't know where they go from here. I mean, it's not the worst trade that was done. It's probably the weirdest though.
Mm-hmm. We'll take those deep words right there. And I guess the other trade before we talk about a couple teams that didn't make a trade, as mentioned briefly, the Karis LeVert going to the Cavs. Cavs are the third best team in the East right now. Jared Allen turning into a legit all-star. I mean, such a powerful setter in that court. I mean, Rajon Rondo has been contributing. Karis LeVert already making an impact. Darius Garland, who is an all-star this year, having a breakout year. Bach, as you mentioned, the Cavs were able to go from worst to first. They only had 22 wins last season, and then they already surpassed that by 10 wins already. I mean, what about the Cavs, who are turning into such an interesting team? And even though it's obvious to say this Cavs team is really good without a LeBron James on it, I guess there's something worth noting there. How do we feel about the Cavs right now?
Look, the LeVert trade makes kind of sense. They didn't really give up a lot for him. It makes sense in the in a vacuum. I still like my trade better for them. The Isaac Okoro for Kobe White trade.
Mm-hmm.
But this is fine. I think really the trade that we were not talking about that we should is the Pelicans trade with the Blazers. But look, this is an interesting team. They're still super young. Karis LeVert has some flaws, like actual, like real flaws that are a problem. But he fits this team for now. I think he's still on a relatively reasonable contract. They still do have pieces they could trade. They have the, you make him play with Kevin Love off the bench. And that's a decent two-man team there. You still technically have the Colin Sexton asset for a sign and trade this offseason. They're an interesting team that's doing a thing. I think their ceiling is really like, how good can Evan Mobley be? Like, that kid is unbelievably good. And it's going to be one of those drafts where we're going to look back and go, holy shit, any of these guys should have been number one. I don't know if Jalen Green's ever going to get to that point, but I think Evan Mobley is going to be in one of those, like in 2 years down the line, we're like, the fuck did anyone draft this guy number one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, and they have kind of the next man up mentality. Just with everything they've gone through with injuries and turnover this year. They're just playing with house money. They're playing loose. They're playing young and fast, and they're catching everybody by surprise, kind of similar to how Chicago did, but with different leadership, obviously. But yeah, they're definitely outperforming expectations. And in the East, this is kind of what we expect teams to fluctuate from 10-3 in a week's time, and vice versa. Just with the margin being so slim, and the teams, win totals changing over year after year. So, I'm definitely happy for them. I think they have a really nice core evolving with Mobley and Jared Allen in their front court. And then they got, and then the LeVert trade is definitely huge moving forward. So I'm excited to see what they are. You know, they look like they have real potential in the playoffs. And we'll see.
All right. And, circling back to that Pelicans deal, as you mentioned. So, yes, and I assume this will add to the Pelicans fucking up in the draft take that Bach was talking about. But Portland traded CJ McCollum, Larry Nance Jr., Tony Snell to the New Orleans Pelicans in exchange for Josh Hart, Nickel Alexander Walker, Tomas Satoransky, Didi Lozanda, and a protected 2022 first round pick. And they also get Portland's second round pick, and New Orleans is 2027 second round pick. But anyways, lots of picks, lots of names, lots of bodies changed. Bach, I would love to hear your take on this deal. Was this ultimately the deal that set you off once and for all regarding the Pelicans moves?
No, they robbed them. The Pelicans robbed them. They won this deal by a landslide. It's not even close. Then Portland rerouted Nickel Alexander Walker to Utah for Joe Ingles, who's not playing at all this year. I mean, clearly they're hoping they suck enough to get a top 10 pick. And then rebuild around Dame. But I don't know what they're doing. They've traded essentially all of their mistakes or all their best players for nonsense. The Pelicans, that was a solid trade. Like, if you're looking for a guy to complement Zion and Ingram, CJ McCollum's a solid choice, and they gave up essentially nothing for it. Larry Nance Jr. is a good pickup. He's a solid wing guy who could be a decent defender, and he's versatile. So he could work next to Zion. He could work next to Valanciunas. He doesn't need to touch the ball a lot. He's like a mini Draymond type thing. They fleeced him. It's incredible that this deal happened. They're not going to be good until they get Zion back. But McCollum's the type of player that you go and you get if you need to level up a little bit with the Zion. Maybe that convinces him to say, look, the real issue is he's in fucking New Orleans and he won't stop eating jambalaya. And by the next time we see him, he's going to be 350 pounds. But they won this trade. It's Portland is making this is a teardown without any hope of coming out. They're okay. So you're going to replace McCollum now next year with Simmons, who's, not bad, but what else have you gotten for Powell? You basically gave up Gary Trent Jr. to end up with a guy who I don't even know. And then Justice Winslow and Eric Bledsoe, who I assume they're going to reroute at some point. The Portland, I don't know what they're doing, but Port Chauncey. Chauncey's one of my favorite players of all time. And he got shafted this year for this coaching job because this team is a mess.
Can it be cleaned up with a Dame move in the summer?
I depends on what the Dame move is. It depends on where they end up in the draft. It depends on what if you're moving Dame for let's say somehow fucking I don't know who's a Dame away from competing. Some team that's ends up with a pick that they shouldn't have, like Boston or something. Maybe they're a Dame move, huh? No, the Knicks. Look, if the Knicks end up with a top 3 pick, they would absolutely trade it for Dame in a heartbeat. That's the type of shit that they would do. That would be, it wouldn't fix the Portland, but that's really their best choice. What else? Who else? This is similar to the Bradley Beal thing. Dame's available, but who's trading for Dame? Especially after, he's basically been out for the entirety of the year with this ab thing. Other than the Knicks, but what do the Knicks have that you want?
I think the Lakers still able with an AD trade.
You think they're not trading AD for Dame? That's not happening.
Straight up on that.
Yeah, no way. I'm trying to think who else in the top could need him. Yeah, you're not trading Dame for Kyrie. Trying to think, do the Hornets trade for Damian Lillard?
Or the Mavs? Or
maybe Cleveland trades for him. They do some type of Colin Sexton, Kevin Love, something.
They all got to go to get Dame.
You know what I haven't thought of too? We're talking about untradeable like assets. I'm wondering if, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know the salary cap balance on this in terms of the trade of the assets, but what if the Grizzlies made a move on Beal?
Okay, but like who? Like because I think it would be a little easier now because I think he's going to be expiring next year.
Yeah.
The question is like, who are the Grizzlies going to give? So you're going to give up Bane. Like you have to give up Bane. And then I would imagine like whatever the salary filler for that is.
Yeah.
That's the only team like that I could think trading for Beal would like make a difference.
Just in terms of teams that could take it to the next level. I'm just thinking.
Right. I mean, it's easier to get to the next level with a healthy Dame than it is with a healthy Beal. But the question is like, who's gonna trade for a healthy Beal? Like you don't like Boston needs they need a Chris Paul. They don't need a Beal. They need a guard to like settle them down.
Yeah.
There's only like the Knicks could use a Dame because they'll like blow the roof off every time he shows up and they'll win, 45 games and get bounced in the first round. Like there's only a handful of teams. Like Chicago doesn't need them. Most teams have point guards.
Teams are like mid-market, like Nuggets, T-Wolves, and stuff like that. I don't think
the T-Wolves maybe like what would you do? D'Angelo Russell and like they're not giving up Towns and they're not going to give up Edwards.
Right. So who are you going to give up? I know. Issue.
Yeah, another question that time will have to answer for us. And just speaking of a couple of teams that didn't make moves in the before the deadline's end, the Knicks. I think it's fair to say that the Knicks extremely underachieved this season. And again, when you lose to the second worst team in the Thunder and you have a kid named Josh Giddey scored 28, 12, and 11, getting a triple-double at 19 against us, who was once
a Knicks fan.
Giddey is good.
Who was
all giddy about it.
Who a Knicks team that was once a dominant defensive team that really didn't change much of the roster, but so much to soak in with the Knicks. First, obviously, Julius Randle has turned into a true canker sore to all of us. I've never seen a player have such a fall from grace who was so beloved 6 months ago, and then now everybody wants him out. He literally flips off the crowd. He doesn't support teammates like he does. He will show up on a primetime game like against the Lakers, but will not look like he gives a shit like against the Thunder last night. Obviously, Kemba and Evan Fournier has turned into a true disaster. We're expecting Kemba to be bought out this week, turning a major L there. But the development of Quentin Grimes might be promising. And also, like I said, Evan Fournier, a failed acquisition, and Leon Rose looks like how we feel dead on arrival. If you saw that pic of him just knocked out, and people already even questioning, can Thibs be the one to make the big to lead this team after all? I mean, for somebody who already won Coach of the Year, there are people really making cases for him to be outed. I mean, when you have.
All right. I mean, you can keep going. I have so many thoughts.
Just the last thing I was going to say is like, when this front office also gives him players and make moves for, Cam Reddish barely gets minutes. I mean, 8 minutes is his average since he's gone on. And we somehow became dysfunctional once again. And not saying, it's not like I expected them to be a top 3 team in the East, but I didn't think that they'd at least be comfortable not playing in a playing game, but I doubt we'll even get to that point. So the Knicks have turned into a real mess, already waiting for the summer so they can see if they can make these moves once and for all. But the Knicks, Bach, I'd love to hear what you got to say.
Is it too late to tell you I told you so? Because I told you so.
It's fair to say. You're definitely right. I can't deny that.
I said this last year. They overachieved to an unimaginable level. The statistics on their defense, like for the shots that people were, it wasn't even like they were flying all over the place and stuff. It was like wide open shots for like an entirety of a year. the opposing team shot like 10% below the average. It was like such a stupid number that made like absolutely no sense. And then Julius Randle decided like, I'm going to start hitting every difficult shot. I'm like, this is not sustainable. At no level was this sustainable. This is what happens when it all comes back down to earth. Now, there is the current argument that maybe Tibbs isn't the guy who gets you over the top, but he's the guy that gets you, like, he gets your house in order. Like, you hire Tibbs for like 2 years. He runs, if anyone who survives being run into the ground is a better team for the next development coach, for the guy who takes you to the promised land.
Like a Mark Jackson to the Warriors, set the team up, and then Kerr just comes in and wins.
Yeah, something like that. That's something we're talking about. Like, the other thing is, look, the Kemba thing was obvious. It was obvious like 2 years ago he was cooked. Derrick Rose is nice. The Fournier thing was good for like a little bit. But this team is, I don't know where you go from here. The Cam Reddish thing is so weird to me. Like, I want Cam Reddish. Like, if I was a team that had, like, if I could take a flyer on a young guy, Cam Reddish is one of them. Like, especially and they gave up essentially nothing for him. Like, Kevin Knox hasn't been an NBA rotational player essentially since he was drafted. At no point was he good. It's still mind-boggling they took him over Michael Porter Jr. Like, even about Porter, like the year and a half of Porter Jr. was more impactful than Kevin Knox. Like, I don't know where you go from here. RJ is okay. You're gonna have a bidding war with Detroit for Mitchell Robinson. At some point, he'll stay healthy and get on the court. But you got a problem. You can't move Julius Randle. Like, who's going to trade for Julius Randle at this point? It
a
seemed like
dysfunctional team.
Yeah, Obi Toppin's doing
New Orleans,
not New Orleans. Like, it seems like a Kings pick. Like, if you could have flipped Julius Randle for like what the Kings got for what the Pacers got, that would have been a good trade. But I don't know who's like, you know what? I'm a Julius Randle away. If Dallas had offered you Porzingis straight up for Randle, would you have taken that trade?
Well, no, because Mitch Robinson has been fine holding the 5 right there, and you just don't need another dysfunctional headache like that. I mean, like you said, it's always about having a point guard. The Knicks need that point guard so bad. And if there was somehow, some way, can get a Damian Lillard, but I understand that logistically that's not possible. So I guess all you can do is
chances you guys end up with Westbrook next year.
I was just thinking that in my head. Like, don't
My
worry,
brother's
Matt.
a Knicks fan. He was like,
Westbrook
look, we should have just fucking traded for Westbrook.
I was hoping for that trade to happen before the deadline, but I guess, does Julius Randle fit that rotation with the aging Lakers team? I guess essentially bring him back home there. And, doesn't seem that anybody likes Russ. So might as well, your problem for my problem.
Well, I mean, you're not going to just you're going to have to give up like RJ.
Yeah, and that's not a question. That's not a question that can be answered. You can't give up RJ Barrett. He's the only one who has promise.
Well, let's try to game this out. You have to give up some combination of Randle and Fournier, because I think they're making the most money on your team. I haven't looked at the cap sheet. Yeah. I assume they're making the most, because I think Fournier was like 4 for 86 or something, and Randle just got extended. So I don't know if the Lakers trade for Randle. I'm sure we're looking at some combination of Fournier, and you got to give up at least
like an Emmanuel Quickly, or
I don't know if you give up Quickly, but you got to give up RJ. You have to assume RJ is gone. Like, he can't be untouchable in this trade. You got to give up some young asset, and maybe fucking Reddish as well. Like, you got something there. But Russ and Randle is not like a terrible building block. You're not going to win a lot of games. It's going to be a lot of fun. You like having Russ on a team is fun, at least when he's like, doing triple double. Like, New York's going to love him.
Or fight with the fans.
I don't know.
Right on the court. Yeah, I just don't think that was worth it. I think the Knicks' only chance to be true competitors is to work on your draft capital. And if you trade anybody who has been developing like an RJ Barrett, you're just taking a step back. So I wouldn't.
book would be taking a step back.
Yeah, so I don't think acquiring any veteran could help us whatsoever. What will help is if we
you got like Mike Conley.
What's gonna help is when Bronny comes in 2025, and then if you heard those LeBron rumors that he would literally just he would just become a
He's
free
going to
agent
he's playing
again.
wherever his kid is. I mean, this has been obvious for like 5 years now that he's structured his contract so that he's going to be a free agent whenever Bronny's in the draft.
Right. So that's the only chance I
that
guess.
Kid's going number one. Like it doesn't matter how good he is. He's going number one.
So
I'll probably end up in the G League by that time. Because I think we're like 3 years out. I think he's a junior.
Okay. Well, again, I think the Knicks, you have to somehow, some way figure out to make this deal to get rid of Julius Randle, or we still have many years ahead of us of being perennial losers and not even being a contender again. So
maybe you should stop overpaying underachieving power forwards. And it seems to have been a problem basically for you for the last decade.
Whether you're Jakeem Noah or an aging Amari Stoudemire, even though he wanted to be here.
Yeah, not ensuring that contract had anything to do with his views. But also, like, we talked about this recently because it's been a decade since Linsanity.
Literally.
Is he the best point guard you've had in that point? It's like him or that one time Raymond Felton was good.
Yeah, I mean, Raymond Felton was almost an all-star at the end of it. But yeah, those 3 weeks.
The 2 months you had Chauncey Billups.
That's brutal.
He was there. What, Jason Kidd too? It's been a long time.
He was there for a minute.
It's been a long time, and that's just been the secret sauce that the Knicks have not figured out. Whether you're an Alfred Payton or this or whatever,
you deserve
it's a
better,
sad
Matt.
existence.
You guys
It's
deserve
all
better.
good. But let's switch it on Alex's team now. Your old ass Lakers. People thought the Lakers would make some deals, but you have players who don't like each other. You have LeBron with the everybody getting traded look. Right now, the Lakers are in the play-in tournament with the Clippers right above them. That's almost 2.5 games from the 8th seed. The Lakers are turning into a comedy show soon. Alex, where is the panic?
Yeah, they're a comedy show, all right, and sitcoms are dead. I ain't watching.
You're not watching you give up?
No, I mean, I'm not.
What do you mean? Dennis Schroeder's coming.
Oh boy, all his 1.7 million and all. No,
Yeah.
bring the bag. No, I mean, like, look, this team has had the same problems they had all year. They don't gel well together. They're not cohesive units. Vogel doesn't have the rotation still, and there's an imbalance of power with this team. There's major egos that don't want to play defense. They have a lot of 1-and-out possessions. They don't take care of the basketball. It's just a recipe all the way down the checklist for losing games and, marginally staying competitive. I don't think there's an off-ramp here with this team. I think that they're going to have to just ride this out into the playoffs at this point, even if they even make the tournament. It's too bad to see LeBron put all this weight on his shoulders, but he's going to have to do it one more time just to stay competitive and hopefully, pray to God that they don't get bounced in the first round. But it's really just
the play-in.
I know. And the issue is it was really just a disappointment not seeing anything from Westbrook to just stay disciplined. Obviously, like, he came in and the organization had the expectation that he would just tone things down, which is ridiculous because you can't teach old dogs new tricks. He plays reckless. He turns the ball over, and it's hard to stay in games, let alone win games, and take some, weight and pressure off LeBron in year 19 when you're shooting yourself in the foot. So it's been difficult to watch, and I just think they're going to have to ride this one out until the end of the season.
In a year where LeBron is older, getting older.
Yeah. Also, like, what do you do with Westbrook? Like, I mean, to be fair, he's generally better the second half of the season, but it's not going to like fix the flaws for this team. Like, look, apparently they tried to get
Christian Wood.
That Christian Wood would have helped them a little bit.
I heard that they weren't able to. They decided against it because of the luxury tax.
They're trying to get Buddy Hield, again, which they should have done in the first place.
Oh, from day one. Yeah, there's no resolving this, and they're gonna have to ride his contract out just till he goes away, basically. I don't know who would even
Well,
dare.
isn't he expiring next year?
Yeah, it's expiring contract, so they're gonna send him to the wilderness, so to speak, and he's gonna just ride out his career, in my opinion. But
I mean, like, wait, like, also, like, that's another, like, you gotta hope you trade him for the Knicks. Like, nobody else is gonna talk themselves into a Westbrook trade.
Well, that's the only thing is the only team that are dumb enough to make a move for him is just trying to sell tickets at this point.
Okay, but that's like who? The Knicks? The Kings? You think you can get the Kings? You think you can get the Kings to flip the Aaron Fox?
Oh God! If there's any hope that they would have a winning season, it's gone with that.
I mean, look, I like the Aaron Fox better than the Westbrook. He would certainly be better. He'd play defense. But
no, if he's gonna go away, he's gonna go to like a Minnesota or a New Orleans or something like that, or basically, just a bottom feeder.
Man, talk about being a journeyman. Russell Westbrook bounces around the league like a below tier player just trying to make it, and he's just happens to be always.
Well, and what kills me too is that he literally has his mirror looking at him in Carmelo Anthony. Like what he could have been watching Carmelo revive his career the last 3-4 years by adapting after the hard truth that he faced in Oklahoma City. He could have learned from that experience, and he just never did. He never evolved an inch, always dug in deeper, even though he said all the right things at the podium and press conferences. But Melo should have taken that opportunity because they had that experience getting bounced in the first round against Portland a few years ago and saying, look, if you don't change your ways, you're going to be out of the league in a heartbeat because I've dealt with it. I've faced it, and I've had to swallow my pride in the face of adversity. So it's too bad that didn't happen. There's still time, but it looks doubtful.
Tell me about it. Well, that's how she all wrote it, guys. The big moves, the big acquisitions, we pretty much hit every single one. Am I missing any? Thesis and Schroeder. Yeah, Schroeder goes to the Rockets. Is it Theses to the Celtics? Celtics made some moves. Is there anything else I'm missing regarding the big acquisitions?
Oh, this is something that is kind of funny that we were talking about this earlier, but
yeah.
So Enes Kanter got traded, and then he got waived, which is good because now he has time to go prepare his speech for when he goes to CPAC because he's now a right-wing reactionary.
Oh my God! And
for those of you who don't know what that is, CPAC is the Conservative Action Committee. It's their political action committee. It's they do it like once or twice
Trump
a year,
Fest.
And it's basically when they go down and make they talk about all the policies that they care about, which 2 times ago was every single speaker complaining about the Muppets and Mr. Potato Head being canceled. It's fucking wild. I can't Enes Kanter is. I can't. It's gonna be so because
isn't his name Freedom now or something?
Huh? He is
Freedom. Enes Freedom.
He's only gonna be accepted because they're he took shots at LeBron, even though he's basically because he said he loves him. He can't go home because he's from Turkey and there's a dictator there and the guy would kill him. But he's pushing for similar policies in America. But fuck it, he's got more time to prepare his speech.
Yes, well, we support Enes Kanter's second life, and God, I love the NBA. But thank you, guys. We'll see how these acquisitions play out. We'll check back in a couple of weeks to see any strides. Also, add some new friends along the way. But again, David Bach, Dolo Ren, Alex Ranniello, thank you, gentlemen, for discussing the big moves before the deadline with me. And let's see what happens post All-Star game. And definitely it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, gentlemen, have a great night.
Thank you, guys.
Good seeing you.
See you later.